Thank you everyone for tuning in today to our Extra Help webinar. It's 9:30, so I'm going to go ahead and get started today. My name is Erin Kopek and I'm the Marketing Coordinator for Extra Help, a workforce management resource. We have joined Extra Help's Workforce Management webinar today entitled Millennials and Supercharged Entrepreneurs, and Craig Lindvahl will be introduced momentarily. The Workplace Excellence Webinars is an excellent program started by Extra Help about a year ago for our clients and colleagues to help manage workforce changes and increase workplace efficiency. Just a few things before we begin. The call is going to last about an hour, and there will be a chance for Q&A at the very end. There is a messaging function at the bottom of your screen for questions if you would like to use that, and you're welcome to type in your questions and we will review those at the end. So let me go ahead and introduce Craig for you. Craig Lindvahl is a nationally recognized educator and filmmaker. In more than 30 years of teaching, he has taught every grade K through 12 and is a recipient of the prestigious Milken National Educator Award and the Jefferson Award for Public Service. He has also twice been recognized as a finalist for Illinois Teacher of the Year. His television work has been nationally on PBS, and his most recent documentaries, including a behind-the-scenes look at the Cincinnati Reds, have enjoyed a run on the Major League Baseball Network. He has been recognized with multiple awards, including 12 Mid-America Emmy Awards. As a result of his work with the innovative CEO class in Effingham, Illinois, he was named the Illinois Teacherpreneur of the Year. All right, Craig, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Well, thanks, and good morning, everybody. I appreciate the chance to share some thoughts with you. We'll just get right into it. So millennials are this new generation. We're going to talk a little bit about who they are, what they know, what they need, how you connect with them. For those of us who are older, it can definitely be a challenge, but I'm telling you that we're going through a period of time that reminds me of the late 1800s, early 1900s. There are various periods of time in history where I believe everything fundamentally changes. The way we think, the way we act, the way we live, it all fundamentally changes. When you think about that period of time, when you had the light bulb and then you had the telephone and you had automobiles and then airplanes, profoundly changed the way we did everything in our lives. And then you have a period of time where it just gets bigger, better, faster. So automobiles work essentially the same way that they did. They're just more efficient and more comfortable, and the highways are better, but it's the same idea. The same with the other things I just talked about. Well, I believe we're back into a period of history like this where things are fundamentally changing. When you think about just the last 10 or 15 years, the way we communicate, the way we think, the way we live day to day, all of that is changing in really profound ways. It's an exciting time to be alive. And unlike this previous period in history where it took anywhere from 20 to 30 years for these new technologies to really root themselves in everyday society, I mean, stuff now, it's just a couple of months, and it's part of who we are. So who are these young people? Well, technically they're defined as having been born between 82 and 02. They are going to outnumber the baby boomers, which I'm at the tail end of that generation. These folks are technically literate like no other generation we've ever produced. That's partly a function of just when we're alive. I mean, their life is just different than a life 30 or 40 years ago. They're the most educated generation we've ever produced. And unlike some previous generations, dollars are not the primary motivation. These are really important things to understand about millennials. I think it's interesting that when I was in college back in the 70s, the entrepreneurial thinkers were like the nut jobs. They were the risk takers. They were always doing what I consider to be dangerous things. I think it's interesting that now young people view entrepreneurship as a way to have control over their life in a world where they have control over very little. So almost 80% of them say they want to be entrepreneurs, and I think that's a really fascinating thing about young people. I'll just share a couple of quick stories about people that I've gotten to know. Nick Graham is from Truman, Minnesota. This young man moved to Iowa and then, without going into all the circumstances, moved back to Truman for his senior year in high school. And the grocery store was about to go out of business. And so Nick negotiated to buy the grocery store. He actually talked the city council into helping him borrow the money to keep the grocery store alive. So here's a senior in high school. He's owning his own grocery store. Sometimes he's late for school or has to leave early because he's got deliveries coming in, and the principal and the superintendent were very understanding about all of that. How cool is that? Nick ended up owning 3 grocery stores, got into the distribution business. I believe he has divested himself of all that and is on to new adventures in his life. But there's no longer this restriction of age. I mean, he did this as a senior in high school just because he saw the need, and he thought the grocery store was such an important part of his community, he didn't want to see that end. This young lady is Maggie, and I work with Maggie actually. We co-produce some stuff together. Maggie just turned 17. She has a host of physical issues. She's got a very rare neurological disorder where she doesn't feel pain or temperature. She's one of about 40 people, I think, in the world who has this. But what Maggie does, which I love about this generation, is she looks at what she does well. She doesn't look necessarily at her limitations. So she entered a writing contest sponsored by the Jackie Robinson family in Major League Baseball, and she won it. And Bud Selig, who is the commissioner of Major League Baseball, liked her work so much that she's been hired as a correspondent for Major League Baseball. So she goes to the All-Star games and the World Series and travels around the country and writes and meets all these cool people. She and I are actually co-producing a film called A Ballpark Story, which I hope will have its premiere maybe in webisodes right before opening day. But just a great kid who looks at, here's what I can do, not here's what I can't. That's very typical of millennials. This young man, David Orris, from my hometown, one of my friends here, Jack Schultz, who's a very, very successful entrepreneur, learned about David when David rented warehouse space from his company. And one of the guys in the warehouse called Jack and said, you need to come out and meet this kid. This is unbelievable. So here's a kid who was about a sophomore in high school at the time, and he was renting all this warehouse space, and Jack said, I just have to know what you do. So he's got a website called Frooper.com, the Frooper Duper Deal of the Day. So it's a Deal of the Day website, and he sold one thing at a time. And Jack said, I don't understand how you can make money just doing that. A lot of electronic accessories, stuff like that. And so David said, well, I'll give you an example. In preparation to moving everything out of my parents' house into this warehouse space, I wanted to clear out some of my old inventory. So last weekend, I had a sack of crap sale. So for $9.99, you could buy a sack of crap. And it might be something cool or it might be something not so cool. Between 6 o'clock on Friday night and 6 o'clock on Monday morning, he sold something like 1,500 sacks of crap. So this is a kid who just saw a need. His biggest challenges were like, being on the telephone in the bathroom between classes, which teachers didn't always like. He has since moved on. He's gotten his college education. There he is with Warren Buffett. He graduated from the University of Arizona. David is now back in town, and he runs a social media company and does extremely well. This is also typical of the way millennials see an opportunity, gain the expertise that they need, and then just chase that. I love that about him. So these are just 3 stories. I could tell you stories from all over the country of young people who have found something they can do and just do that. I know you probably realize this, but depending on which futurist you listen to, it won't be unusual for these kids to have 12 to 15 jobs in their life, 6 or 8 career changes. So they're going to learn how to recognize things that they're passionate about and pursue those. It may not be a lifelong thing for them. It may be a short-term thing. So what do they know? And this is a great deal of what they bring to the table. Well, I'll tell you one thing they know is that unlike people my age, and I'm 56, it's not going to be you study and get an education, you go get a job, and then you move your way through to retirement. They understand the world is not like that. And think about the kids who are in college right now. 2008 was a long time ago. That's when they were in junior high. They don't know a world that's stable. They only know a post-9/11 world. They only know a world that is recession and post-recession. So they no longer view things the same way the people before them view. They know that. They also know, and I'm sorry about this, that in their heart they say, yeah, there's opportunity, but not here. So wherever here is, there's no opportunity here. That's something that is a great concern to virtually every community I visit in the country, and I do a lot of traveling. They're worried about our kids are leaving. They don't think there's anything here for them. We don't know how to connect with them. They also know a world that functions on technology. I want to show you two photographs. This is in Rome, and it's the announcement of the Pope in 2005. So take a look at that picture, all right? Here is the same scene last year when they announced the new Pope. Isn't that incredible? Look at the difference just in 8 short years. I believe if you look hard, you see one cell phone down in the right-hand corner of somebody here, and now, oh, sorry, went the wrong direction. And now look at the difference. One time I was speaking, a guy said, oh, I can tell the difference. In this photograph, there's 2 nuns right here at the bottom, and in this photograph, I don't see any nuns. But it's just amazing. This is the world they know. In kindergarten, they came to us curious, excited. I've taught every grade K through 12. And one of the things I dearly loved about kindergartners is that they were excited no matter what we did. If I said, you know what we're going to do today? We're going to go outside and we're going to rub gravel in our hair. Some kid would say, oh, that's what I was hoping we would do. That's like my favorite thing to do. I love that about them. If you ask a group of first graders, who can help me solve a problem? That's the way their hands look. They're like, oh, absolutely, I can do that. And more often than not, the questions they ask are right at the heart of what needs to be solved. By the middle of 2nd grade, though, this is what we've turned them into. So millennials have a great deal of experience with, I don't ask questions, I pretend to understand, you're going to tell me what I need to know, I'm going to spit part of that back up on a test, and then we're going to move on. So the purpose for too many of our young people of knowledge and information is an immediate one. I have a test, I have a quiz, I get a grade, and then I move on. We're not developing the kind of thinkers. So what they know is a world that I give an effort, I get a reward, you tell me what I'm supposed to do, and there's a correct answer. They know that system. They know it really well. They also know how to learn, though. We don't always capitalize on that in school, but they know how to learn. I know lots of people my age who won't get a new operating system on their phone because they don't know how to use it. They don't know how to use the old system. Well, young people, millennials, understand it's just a different version of the same thing. So they know how to learn and they know how to gather information. Those that are 2 of their best things, and they are 2 of the most critical things they need as they move through their life. This is a side note, but I often ask young people, at what age do you think you'll first feel stupid about technology? Because I was in my 50s when I first had, and it was Twitter. And it's not that I'm making a value judgment on Twitter. I still can't figure out why it matters. And I want to understand it, but I still can't figure out why this matters. It makes me feel stupid. Well, most of my students will say, probably in my late 20s, I'll start to feel stupid. The other day, one who's 22 told me, I feel stupid already. And it's not because there's brand new technology. It's because things like Facebook and Twitter are being used in entirely different ways than I used them just 4 or 5 years ago. I think that's fascinating that that process is being accelerated. So what do millennials need from us, to be successful in life? What is it they need? Well, this is true. Millennials often have a skewed sense of fairness. I mean, I'll hear from a young person, I studied 3 hours for the test and I got a D, therefore the test is clearly unfair. I'm putting quote fingers up here, reality TV, which is, I'm in the television business, and reality TV could not be less real most of the time. But they're regularly fed a diet of some Kardashian sister saying, I'm the only one who deserves to be upset. Nobody else deserves to be upset. I'm the only one who deserves that. There's a lot of talk about deserving because of this skewed sense of what's fair. I went to a cheerleading competition last year to watch some of my students, and every team got a first place. First place platinum, first place gold, first place silver. This is what creates that. These kids are not entitled. They're not somehow flawed in this. We created this. And they have a sense of responsibility that we've allowed them and taught them, which says, yes, I meant to do that, therefore it's done. And it's the same thing. So that's what they need help from us to do. I spoke to a group of college students a couple years ago, and they were obviously forced to submit questions to me. They just could not have been more obvious. How'd you get your job? How much money do you make in your job? What's the worst thing about your job? But this question really caught my attention because it is a question. There's a question mark at the end of it. But when you read it, what would you consider to be your debut throughout your accomplishments? You go, I have no idea what that means. So I just asked when I spoke, if whoever wrote this would tell me what they want to know, I'd be glad to answer it. And this kid said, oh, yeah, it was me. I just mean, like, what motivates you? And I said, well, you realize that's not what that said. And then that kid said something that I think really clarifies where we need to help millennials. He said, well, that's what I meant. And he said it in a way like, what's your problem? What do you want me to do? Write that question? So they definitely need some help on that. There is a new movement called hackademics. I don't know if you've heard of this term. Hackademics is where you take responsibility for your own learning. I have just started to hear in the last 18 months companies as I travel who say, I no longer use the college diploma as the separating mark. I use competencies and skills. Now, there's no question. There's a ton of statistics to support the fact that if you have the more education you have, the more money you make, the more stable your life is. That's still all true. But companies are beginning to look at this saying, I need to know that you can do stuff, not just that you have a diploma. So hackademics, particularly in the worlds of technology or graphics, they take responsibility for their own. They go to companies and say, look, I can do these things. Well, there's a website called uncollege.org, which is where I got this. I both love it and I chuckle with it, all right? So here are the top 5 skills. You need to be able to write, and I totally agree with that. I think that's terrific. You need to understand coding. Their viewpoint is if you're going to work in the world of computers, you need to understand the language of computers, and I think that's brilliant. You need to be able to network. Once again, brilliant. And you have to have a sense of entrepreneurship, which is obvious, especially in that world. I love all that. Where they need help, though, is that this is the list of top 5 skills. Yeah, you see where they need a little help, like maybe proofreading. So paying attention to what they say, maybe it's something that we can help them with. I'm trying to get this to move now, sorry. So there are these, oh, wait a minute, sorry. It froze on me in the button, went twice. So you see, here's the kind of tool set we want kids to have. Now if you go to the bottom, problem solvers, that's one I hear complaints about all the time. Technology users, kids are really good at that. Millennials are great at that. Mastering content, that's like the only tool we concentrate on in school, is to make sure kids master the content. Lifelong learners, oh man, I think this is the best potential we've ever had for a generation of lifelong learners. Collaborators, that's a difficult thing for millennials, and communicating is a very difficult thing for millennials. But they need all these tools. And I feel like our system of educating tells kids, if you master the subject, you'll be fine. I hear complaints about these other softer skills. That's where I hear complaints from employers. So how do we give this to them, and then how do we keep them in our community? Well, I want to talk a little bit about my life work now. I've done a lot of weird things in my life. I've been a musician, worked all around the world, been a filmmaker. I taught every grade K through 12. I've just done lots of different kinds of things. Now my life work has been consumed by something called CEO. And I run an institute where I help communities start classes that are called Creating Entrepreneurial Opportunities. And I want to tell you about what that class is, because I think this is the very best way to connect with young people in the community and to change the way they feel about that community and the number of opportunities that are there for them. Well, here are some things you need to know about the class, because this is how you do it. First of all, it's a class that's funded by investors, not by schools. So the class is completely funded by people who put in $1,000 a year. It can be companies, banks, political entities like village boards and city councils, individuals, you name it. The class never meets. Hang on. Come on, baby. There we go. This slide may go real quick because I tapped it twice. They meet in businesses. They never meet in a school. So the class is constantly meeting in a business. Sometimes it's a fancy place like that, and sometimes it's just a workroom in a factory. And then it's multiple school districts most often. So now as you see these kids come on bail, there we go. There's probably 5 different school districts right there. From an economic development standpoint, tremendous thing. That helps your area think more regionally about economic development. They run a class business together. The class here in Effingham, Illinois just ran this business last week called the CEO Experience, a half-day business conference built around the essential ingredients of CEO. The kids do everything, though. They plan it, market it, sell it, contract it. They do everything. Real money, real risk, real reward. And by the way, last week they attracted over 400 people. I would guess they probably made around $15,000 profit off of that business. But the students do everything. And then each student starts their own business, which is a real viable business. And I'll show you a couple of those in just a minute. Here we go. They write 2 or 3 business plans during the course of the year. Not so much for the document, because that's just an assignment. It's for formulating a good idea, asking good questions, doing good research, projecting what might happen, and then communicating that. And they'll use that every single day of their lives, no matter what they do. And then twice a year, they sit down with bankers and investors, and they present their business plans one-on-one. Again, it's not for an assignment. It's for a business they're going to run, and that gives a real urgent nature to the work that they do. They each, see if this is the right slide. Nope, then we visit dozens of businesses. So last year we visited 71 area businesses of every conceivable size, shape, and kind. Do you see how now we're connecting our business people with our students, regular, ongoing, meaningful ways? We're getting our students connected to the stuff that's going on in town, where students say, you know, I've driven by this place 1,000 times in my life. I never knew what was going on in it. And then we had 140 guest speakers last year who talked about everything from financial structures and specific business information to life philosophies, business philosophies, and you name it. Once again, ongoing, meaningful, regular connection with the kids. And this is the way they look when they're learning. It's just the coolest thing to see high school students who look like that when they're learning. And then each one of our students gets connected with a mentor from the business community. And for some of the kids, it's the start of a lifelong friendship. For some of them, it's a professional relationship for the year. But the important thing is, again, this ongoing, meaningful contact between kids and business people. And at the end of the year, we have a trade show for each of our classes where they showcase their businesses. People come out. Here in Effingham, which is a town of 12,000, we'll get 1,000, 1,500 people who come out to see what the kids are doing. And for every compliment I hear on a kid's business, I hear 20 compliments on the kids. I just can't believe the kid I just talked to. And you'd see businesses like Michael, who had a business called No Homework, K-N-O-W. So the way it worked, a teacher would go to this website, type in the assignment, and it would text it to all of the students and their parents, which is a very cool thing. So you could no longer have a kid coming back saying, oh, I didn't know I was in this class. I didn't know I was supposed to do anything. Well, Michael has since morphed this into a business called Send Your Deal. It should be on its way here. There we go. And now he's taken this to another iteration, and I can't tell you the name of it because it's not for publication yet, but it's for businesses. What he's doing is taking this original idea, he's streamlining it, making it easier to use, making it applicable to more settings, so businesses can use it, organizations can use it, schools can use it as a very quick way to communicate with customers. There are other products like this in the market, but Michael's doing his research right now to make sure that what he's offering is something that people can't get in other places. And then you've got a student like Lexi who wrote a book about her experience in the class. And she sold that book. It had to do with people she'd met through the course of the class, how they changed the way she thinks and views the world. She's writing a second edition of that book right now. And then she's now started a new business called A.T. Abbott. And this is a traveling boutique, basically. So she has a trunk show, as what they call them. She buys these clothes wholesale. She goes to sororities, to professional business women's groups, to businesses, and she has a show, very much like Pampered Chef or something like that. She turns over her inventory about every 6 weeks, so she's constantly got new products, and she's at a very interesting phase in her business right now because it's extremely successful because of her personality and her drive. All right, so she's trying to decide, how do I grow this? You know, do I continue to do these shows and have an online store where people can return and buy things? Do I train other people to go out and sell and make it more of a Pampered Chef model? She's worried about giving up control. She's worried about, are they going to have the same dedication and commitment to things that I have? like every growing business struggles with. But the cool thing is she's 20 years old, and she knows all this stuff. One of the great points of this class is that kids know more about success and failure and networking and communicating than most people twice their age, and they didn't have to lose their house and car to learn it. Brandon had a business called Hem & Outdoors. That thing on the right is called the Man Closet. He was really worried about the name, whether it would be well received, but it perfectly describes what's in there. So you put your hunting stuff in there, and it seals it, so you keep the smell in or the smell out. Well, I'm not a hunter, whatever the point is. But he sold 8 of those at $450 at that trade show, had 2 distributors and a manufacturer interested in the product. He's had to put it on hold for right now because he's in college and playing baseball, and he just can't balance everything. But that's a winner. That's a product that you're going to see down the road. This young man, I just have to tell you his story. Can you tell by looking at him that this is a thinker who maybe is occasionally in trouble for stuff? Well, his business in the class was putting the logos of companies on the outside of their work truck mirrors. Great idea, but it's just a temporary business for him. I want to tell you his story because this is the way you want your young people to think. And sometimes our system of educating kids squelches this in our millennials. So we had a guy come in and talk about private label manufacturing. And I don't mean to insult you, but if you don't know what that is, that's where a manufacturing facility makes one product, let's say a cake mix, but they might package it for 25 different private label stores. And he buys their excess capacity. So he might buy pretzels or cake mix or laundry detergent, and then he repackages it and sells it. And he was talking about the little gels that you put in your dishwasher and they dissolve. Well, you fast forward a week. We're talking about product design. I travel all the time, and we were talking about hotel shampoo bottles and how poor an experience that often is. You can't get the lid off, you can't get them open, or you squeeze the shampoo out and it's like a snot bubble, and then as soon as you let go of the bottle, it sucks it all back in. So Chris, this kid says, why couldn't you use those gel caps that we talked about last week? Why couldn't you put shampoo in those? You crack it open, you use it, you throw it on the floor of the shower, and it dissolves. Well, most people my age would say, yeah, somebody ought to do something about that. This is one of the things I love about millennials and that you got to tap into if you work with millennials. Chris went and found out how they worked. And then he did temperature measuring in various showers at the head and on the floor of the shower to see what the water temperature was, to see if it would activate the melting and dissolving process. Then he found a company overseas that manufactures dissolvable packaging. And then he ordered samples. They look like little ketchup packets. And I laugh because he also learned that when you say to a company in China, I'd really like to have these samples as soon as I can get them, you get a box about the size of an iPhone and a $102 UPS bill. And then he texted me and said, am I going to have to learn everything this way? And I'm like, listen, dude, it's all right. You'll never make that mistake again, and there will be people who won't because you know what you know. And then he found out that shampoo has too high water content in it. It dissolves the packaging. But he's still continuing to think about this idea, and he texts me stuff, and he shows me things he's working on. And when Tide came out with little dissolvable packets that you put in your washing machine and they dissolve in cold water, he texted me right away, and he's like, listen, I know I'm onto something here. I know this can work. I just love that he's always thinking about stuff, and he's going to be a great entrepreneur in his life. School was not his thing. These two boys started a company when they were in the class where they converted vehicles to run on propane and natural gas. They've since moved away from the kits, and they've moved into the tanks. So now they sell the tanks that people use for this. It's been a great business. They've partnered with 2 of our class investors, so I don't really worry about these boys getting over their heads. They're doing fantastic with this. Now, the last month or so with propane going crazy, sales have not been so good, but they're in a great business, and they're going to do great things both with the business and their lives. The purpose of all of this stuff with the class, from an economic development standpoint, is to get the kids to view their hometowns in a different way. So we do a pre and post sort of survey with the kids when they come into the class. One year we had 25 kids in the class. At the beginning of the year, 3 of those kids were interested in coming back at some point in their lives. At the end of the year, 21 were interested in coming back. And it's because I didn't know all these cool places were here, and I didn't know all these cool people were here. So when you connect in this way, I hope you see how this all comes together in what I'm talking about today. you've got millennials who have these particular incredible skills, and you've got some really striking needs. Well, your successful business people and community people, they're the ones who have those really critical skills for the kids. You put them together, and it changes everybody. It transforms everybody. It's just the coolest thing I've ever seen. So now we have 15 CEO classes in 3 states. And by the way, the one on the left is Minnesota. When I go out and speak, sometimes it's called Idaho. It's even been called Virginia, which I thought was a little odd. They said, well, I thought you just turned it up on its side. So maybe some older people need some help with some stuff too. So in these 15 communities, we've got CEO classes going where kids are having the same experience, getting connected with their business people and all of that. Vince, the kid who was with the fuel conversion business, he was not going to go to college. Vince was just going to work in his family's welding shop. Now he's well on his way to getting an MBA because he feels like if I really want to accomplish what I want to accomplish in my life, I need that. That's a kid whose life is completely different because he got connected with the right people. This young lady, Jessica, her family runs a very successful furniture store in a very, very small community. And she told me when she was in the class, I'd love to come back and eventually take over my family business if it was anywhere but here. And now that she's just out of college, she's got a job, she's rethinking that completely. She says, you know, that's where I have a network of people, that's where I have the most opportunity. I'm kind of stuck in a corporate world here. I'm not sure this is what I want. I love that she's thinking about that. I could tell you a dozen stories. I could tell you dozens, because that's what this program does. When you take what millennials know and what they need, that's your hope, all right? And you connect them with your best resource, which is your people, some pretty incredible things happen. It brings out the best in everybody. So the Midland Institute for Entrepreneurship, you're welcome to go to that website, midlandinstitute.com, and see some more about this kind of work and what we're doing. Effingham CEO is one of our local class websites. CEO Next that you see down there, that's a blog that I just started about a week ago. You're welcome to go on there and read more about just stuff that I'm learning as I work with these kids, stuff that I see as I visit our classes, just stuff that I'm thinking about. That's kind of my story. I wanted to keep it short today and be respectful of your time, but I will be happy to answer any questions about any of this. I've got a ton more anecdotal knowledge about millennials and how they think and work, but I'm happy to answer or involve you in any kind of discussion you'd like to have.
All right, Craig, I appreciate that was a great presentation. Everyone who's tuning in today, feel free to reach out to Craig if you have any further questions or reach out to me. Thank you very much for joining us today. Our next webinar is going to be talking about hot topics and legal updates to the background check process and the things that you must know. So tune in on March 20th. It's on a Thursday, and you can register by emailing me at ekopek@extrahelpinc.com. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Craig.
Thanks, everybody.